Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the south-afrifur podcast. You're listening to myself, Ivic Wolf, and our guest this evening is Sean. I'm going to say this incorrectly again because I got the wrong name stuck in my head. It's, what's it, Gerace?
Wow, I'm actually impressed. That is correct.
Okay. And obviously joining us is our co-host, Scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Sean Gerace is the, what would we call you? Like CEO, COO, and CFO of Go
Yeah,
Publications,
all of the
head
above.
head of everything.
Yes.
All right. And one of the reasons why we sort of found a little bit of interest in him, of course, is that he's helping Yaku Milan, one of the other people who's joining us, or who had joined us on, what was it? How many weeks ago was that? Like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 months?
Who April? He was ages ago,
Yeah,
like
April.
months.
April, yeah. Months ago, yeah, probably. Sounds about right. But yeah, so he is publishing Advolf's book, which is I forget again. I've
The
seen it like
title's
3 times now. Yeah.
okay. The title's been changed since he was on originally. It was When They All Come Together, but it's been now changed to Rewritten.
Oh, right.
Okay. Do you? Well, I mean, I'm assuming that you had an idea as to what the decision or what was behind that decision.
There's a couple things. We talked it over. The original title, it's a bit too lengthy, a bit too, I don't want to say broad, but we kind of figured that Rewritten worked a lot better with what was going on in the actual book, and just brainstormed a few things, and that's kind of the one that stuck out to both of us.
Hmm. Okay. So your movement into editing and publishing seems to be quite an interesting one at that. Like, maybe just walk us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So back when I was, 19, I was one of the managers at a Borders bookstore, which for those in the U.S. will know no longer exists, but was one of like the major chains along with Barnes and Noble. And while I was there, I had gotten more into the furry literature scene because I realized it existed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
from there, I was actually able to work with the publisher to get a few of the books actually into our store, with the hopes maybe getting it to some other stores. So that was fun.
Hmm.
And
All right.
I don't remember why I started editing. It just seemed like something that I might enjoy doing. But I did. Got my name out there a little bit via some FA ads. Um, Worked a little bit with a couple of the publishers on some small projects. And yeah, I've been kind of going since then.
All right. And your initial project was in 2011, the idea of anthroquatic editing,
Yes.
which I guess eventually moves towards goal, or does it fall under, or is it its own separate project?
They're kind of their own specific different entities, I would say. Granted, Yako's book actually started as an editing project, and he mentioned, "Oh, while we're here, maybe we can see if you have any ideas for if this would be possible to be published." And
Uh-huh.
working on it, I'm like, "Hey, I want to publish this. Let's just do that."
Hmm.
Nice.
And as far as
Maybe is he your first published book?
first published, that's not mine. We'll go with Gold Publications actually started with the webzine a glimpse of anthropomorphic literature.
Mm-hmm.
I'd kind of planned to do, microfiction, reviews, some small articles, and kind of release them as quarterly ebooks, essentially. Started out okay, not terribly much interest at the long run, so I ended up kind of scrapping that and just making a print version out of that. So that was, I guess, technically my first published item, and his book is now the first major release coming out this upcoming weekend, actually. And yeah, we're going from there.
That's really
Hmm.
cool. Um,
Okay.
so you said it's coming out this week. Like, how long has this sort of been in the making for you guys? When did you get involved, and when did the writing start? I suppose.
He sent the book to me as an editing project, probably I want to say 8, 9 months ago, something
Mm-hmm.
along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
We had thought about trying to get it out for release maybe through like a distributor in say January, but when that kind of blew up as a not a good idea, like, oh, how about we just pick a convention that I'm going to be at and actually just make that the release date. So we worked it out, and this will be the first major con I've been at since I've been taking it. So it will be Furthermore.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome. Furthermore is a really nice convention from what we've heard, I think.
Yeah, because none of us have been to any of those things. Jealous.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Very jealous, yes. Of course, I think he's been speaking to you now. Yaku has been speaking to you about the South African furry convention. I think he said something along the lines of against somebody and something's like wishes. Or where was it? Let me see his tweet. No. What am I talking about?
I have
Placed
no idea.
orders. There's something that he said somewhere along the way where it's an interesting thing that he's actually getting like books for the convention here in South Africa as well.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
And yeah, which is really really nice of him. We really appreciate that. And yeah, it's an honor, I think, to have I think somebody, I guess, trust us to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're kind of just starting out, yeah? I mean, aside from like publishing your own books, what are the sort of costs and things like that involved in this kind of process? Like, what do you need to be able to do to publish, for instance?
Well, kind of go through the process one by one so I can get an idea. So first off, ISBN publisher printer, buying those, it's not a cost people think of, but then those, I think you can either buy one for $100, 10 for $200, or 100 for like 500 or something along those lines. So obviously it depends on how much you're printing. So that's kind of a cost that's in there that you'll think about. But then it's, are you your own, like, I do all the editing and everything myself, but if I wasn't, I'd have to pay, someone to do the typesetting or someone to do the editing, then obviously someone to actually make the cover for it, and then I got to pay for the printing. So there's a lot to it, and as anyone that's worked with me will tell you, it's definitely been a stress point because it's a lot more than you know the costs are there, but then you still don't realize the costs are there. And yeah, it's stressful, but once it all kind of comes to fruition, it's a good feeling because then you have this thing that's there and you actually can sell and
it's a physical
make
thing.
your money back on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully would probably be the term that we make there. I mean, like, it must be difficult considering that, like, I mean, when it comes to publishing within the furry fandom itself, there are like many other publishers out there. We've spoken to Tempo, who works with Sofa Wolf, and Howl was obviously on here as well. The guys from Howl. So I mean, like, it seems like it's becoming a far larger thing that people are doing these days, aside from the artwork and things like that. It's starting out, like, I guess, publishing houses and things like that, and either starting statewide with a little bit of international, along with, like, what's the word, ebooks and all that kind of stuff first, and then moving forward from there towards attempting to get them into the mainstream media, which is, I guess, probably one of the goals that a lot of people have, is to get their book in mainstream media, and people go like, oh, what's this? Who's this person? I must read this. I don't know why, but it's
why are there
here.
funny animals on the cover?
Yeah, and it definitely seems like with a lot of the newer generation of publishers, again, you mentioned Thurston Howell, Weasel Press, Jaffa Books in Australia, a lot of them will actually a lot of them do actually print non-furry material as well, and kind of that hope of, having a more broad audience. And I know one of my goals is going to definitely be to figure out marketing and that sort of thing within outside of the community, more within like the general sci-fi fantasy community, and trying to raise both awareness for furry literature in that regard and trying to have more of an audience. Yeah, it's becoming more of a focus rather than just trying to use material, because the material's there, the
Yeah,
talent's there. Now it's just a matter
yeah.
of marketing that talent to the right places.
Mm.
Because I mean, with all that marketing, and again, like I mean, I mentioned this idea that we're moving in a position where like it's furry literature, it's interesting to a lot of people, but one of the questions that I'd like to ask is that I mean, recently, I think in the last what's it 10, 15 years, we've been looking at a massive drop in like I guess revenue for publishing houses, or at least big name publishing houses. I mean, Pearson's been having trouble. Penguin's been having trouble. Penguin obviously not even like printing poetry anymore, for instance, that they don't even take that on as like creating anthologies and things like that. So I mean, it's interesting to note that, irrespective of the idea that, big publishing houses are having trouble, that the smaller, or I say smaller, but smaller,
Mm.
publishing houses are beginning to sort of like pop up and go, well, if you guys aren't going to create a platform for us, we will. We'll do it ourselves.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I actually worked at a college bookstore as the textbook manager for a little while
Hmm.
as well, and I got to work. I worked with Pearson, I worked with McGraw-Hill, and some of the big name publishers. Not really specifically for fiction, more for like academic textbooks. But
Hmm.
it kind of all flows around. I mean, even that industry is kind of starting to waver a little bit. Yeah, you
Yeah.
are getting a lot more and more of the indie scene popping up, because now there's the talent still out there, the talent shifting its nature, and a
Mm.
lot of the big names aren't kind of keeping up with what people are writing or wanting to write these days, it seems like, or they're trying to be more selective, and now there's all this talent that's floating out there, and it's great work, it's just nowhere to submit it. So
Mm.
trying to kind of fill that void. And it's also the platform just of social media, just general internet anymore, because now things are a lot more available. Ebooks are becoming more popular, though print books are still kind of like definitive a little bit, and it's a whole kind of jumble that everyone's trying to figure out still, and try new things to see if they can figure it out.
Yeah.
And
I
I mean
mean,
the
and I guess with yeah,
No,
go.
yeah, you go
Sorry.
ahead. I'll remember.
No, no, go right ahead.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what I said.
All right, cool.
I was gonna start somewhere.
Okay.
And
And I suppose like part of all of like you mentioned the indie scene, like part of the sort of the success behind all of this is the barrier to entries are just becoming like smaller and smaller. Like you're
mm,
sort of I don't know if it's a one-man operation or not, but it's not like uh, sort of a building full of people having to like move all of this stuff through bureaucracy and everything. You have the tools, you have the people, you have the services available to you in such a like modular fashion that you can produce these things. You can get something that's
mm,
worthwhile out there on the scale that fits your audience, kind of thing. And
Yeah, agreed.
that's really cool. Hmm.
ah,
Yeah, that was my
oh,
point.
okay.
Yeah, sorry. Like
um,
it's cool that that is a possibility, like in this day and age, like you said. Like ebooks are essentially
but
publishing them is, yeah. There's no actual like uh, hard copy stuff involved, so it's even smaller barrier to entry. You don't need a printer, kind of thing.
yeah,
But yeah, that's really
but
cool.
I mean, in that same sense, I mean, if we look at the music scene, for instance, it's the same thing there, where a lot of music companies have been finding it very difficult to, like, especially the big name ones have been finding it very difficult to actually make money off of things. That's because of pirating and so on and so forth and that kind of stuff. Where smaller companies are actually finding it a lot easier, I think, even to keep up with whatever competition they've set themselves. Not necessarily setting any kind of monetary goals, actually, what's the word? Um, you know, crediting the people who are doing their work, for instance. I mean, that's what I find is very important for me, because I mean, it's been around since what, the 1970s, around about there, where people were making music and the writers were barely ever recognized for the lyrics that they wrote, for instance. And I mean, like, if we had to think about things as poetry and lyrics as poetry and things like that, you have so many ghost writers for, you know, say lyrics for a song or this or that or the other thing, and people sort of sit there going like, "Yeah, no, but we're not making enough money," and you're not, because I mean, but then where does creative anything come from? I mean, how do you inspire somebody to continue writing when it doesn't seem like they're going to, benefit from it?
Mm.
Like personally, if you could maybe sort of give us a little bit of information like that, like what kind of inspiration would you sort of tell people to continue writing?
I mean, in general, the writing scene, the publishing scene, it's become a major labor of love.
Hmm.
So a lot of these publishers, even the small ones coming out here, as you said, it's not to make a huge monetary goal or gain in any way, because we know the money's not really there. We do it because we love books, we love the authors that are writing them and the stuff they're coming out with. We want to
Hmm.
really showcase that. So I mean, for me, I mean, I did a lot more writing back in like high school days, but even then, just having that inspiration of these people really want me to succeed. No, it's like they're putting themselves up and their companies up just because they want writers like me to succeed. I think that is a huge push to actually go for it, and especially with, like
Hmm.
within the furry community, all the anthologies that are opening up and just looking for that massive spread of talent and trying to get them published, get their name out there, and once a lot of them get themselves into that book for the first time, they end up getting hooked. Like they want
Hmm.
to keep writing for more and more because now they've been recognized. They've been told that they're good enough and that they
Yeah.
have the skills, so they want to just keep pushing it.
All right. And I mean, I guess we can probably also talk about the Ursa Majors, which is coming up very, very soon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Uh, and like sort of the influence of the Ursa Majors. Do you know how much influence the Ursa Majors has actually had on people actively then, buying books that they possibly wouldn't have bought beforehand, or trying to support writers because of what they know and believe these people are doing? How do you gauge that?
So from what I've seen, like there's not a ton of talk that I found with both the Ursa Majors and actually with the Writers Guild Award, the Kyoto
Hmm.
Awards. Um, Once the books are nominated, they win awards. You do see a little bit of people going, oh wow, I saw this book was listed as the winner of the Ursa Major Award or the winner of a
Hmm.
Kyoto, and people must have loved it. I want to see it. It's at this point, it's not. I mean, it does help, but it's not a huge drive. One thing that, and actually this is something that I was thinking about when I was actually in charge of the Writers Guild, was kind of trying to figure out a way to really push with the publisher to kind of say, hey, this book's an award winner. It won this award for this thing.
Hmm.
People recognize it. Go buy it. And I think it's trying to kind of find a way. Like when you have the books that have like the Newbery Award with that nice little, you know, seal on it, something along those lines. I know with the way that we print, it's less likely in that regard. But just kind of making it more of a statement that hey, this book won an award. It's a work in progress with a lot of stuff going on with the furry writing community right now. So I think we're getting there. I think it's
Okay.
probably a few more years down the line. It's going to show through.
All right. And I mean, how do you gauge a good publication from a bad one, maybe? Like how or what are your standards, I guess?
I know one. If I mention standards, because one thing I've kind of been known for is kind of being the uppity one. Like I have much higher standards. Let's say higher standards. Like there's like thinking hosts are badges. I'm a lot more picky. I think that's
Hmm.
that's probably more I can say. A lot more picky than others. Like you'll notice, like when we had the Furry Writers Club, the first anthology, it's a rather small anthology. Like probably 60-70% of the stories did not make it in because I had such high standards, and
Yeah.
I didn't want stories to be too alike, and I wanted the stories to all kind of have a central theme and a message to go along. I want them to all to be entertaining.
Hmm.
Um, so no, I'm very picky in that regard. I want every story to shine through. I don't want it to have like you go through an anthology and you have a couple of stories where it's like, oh, this is okay, but I'm gonna kind of skip through it after the first few pages. I want
Mm.
every story to kind of have its own showpiece.
Yeah.
And moving
And
even that, oh, go ahead.
no, 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 go right ahead.
And even moving that into novels. Well, I haven't had a lot of novel submissions to me, which some people find a little bit surprising. You know, I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm sure to me, but yeah. So even with something like Ayako's book, it's it was something that filled a void in the furry community right now. Like there's not that really gritty post-apocalyptic horror dystopian novel that is really going to grab at you. And I saw that and I wanted it. That's why I just said, okay, you can go somewhere else if you want, but please no, send it to me. I want this.
Okay.
And that's what I'm looking for. And I'm also going to get a little flack because I'm sure when Fred was on, was it last week or the week before?
It was we've
I think it was 3 weeks ago.
yeah.
Some time ago. He brings up the term funny animals a lot,
Hmm.
which he uses for more, some people say zipperbacks as well. The furry character that's only won by the fact that you mentioned there's a tail flick or the fact that there's a species there somewhere.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I'm that one that wants to really have a purpose for them to be animal people. Like
Yeah.
I want them to I want them to either they survived the human society. They were created for a purpose. It's a whole different world and they evolved from something, or this is just clearly this is how they always were. Because I feel like that's going to help a lot when trying to move this towards a more non-furry audience. Because
Hmm.
now, especially with the sci-fi community, everything's got to have a purpose. Yeah, it can be twisted and extremely out there, but I got to be able to connect A to B to C, and I think this will really kind of help that. It's kind of my opinion on that.
Hmm.
Trailed a little bit off there, but yeah. So,
No.
case in point, that I'm very picky with my standards. So everyone's kind of got their own thing they're looking for, which is why when you're writing, know who you're writing to.
Okay. Huh.
Right.
That's actually interesting. I mean, like, and again, with Fred Patton, we had him on a month ago now. It's been a while since we've had something that isn't necessarily a chaos cast or
Or a
I guess
break
repeat
week.
guests at times or a break week. So I mean, it's good to have a good guest lined up as well. Not that all the other guests are terrible, but I mean, like it's nice to hear sort of that kind of opinion in respect to like what we can and what we can't do with literature, because it's important that we are able to focus a little bit sometimes. And I mean, one of the questions that I do want to ask is that do you feel that uh, with that idea of the more, I guess, realistic or the more kind of like actively characterized animal people, I guess we could say that, does it feel does it ever feel forced from people though? Do people ever try to force the issue?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've definitely read several stories with the anthologies I've worked with that we've come back and said, make this more furry, give them some sort of purpose, or show the fact that they're this animal person more, and you'll definitely see the fact that they add. He says as his tail twitches like a couple times throughout the story, and really just that's all they focus on is trying to
Hmm.
push those physical traits. And I mean, that's probably the biggest mistake I think people make when they try this is it's not just a physical thing. It's not just we're seeing this animal person. I mean, obviously they're going to have different senses. They're going to have different reactions. They're going to have different mechanisms within their animal traits that are going to affect how they act and behave. There's going to be different social behaviors that you may get from an animal people society compared to a human one.
Mm.
And those are the big things that I think I kind of look for.
Hmm.
Even if you don't specifically say, oh, we created these animal people in a lab 25 years ago and now they're a thing. Even if you're
Hmm.
it's just your animal people are all that, and you just want to mention all the different ways that the world is changing or has changed from you know from also the dogs and they're sniffing everybody, and is there a social etiquette for that and trying to remember people by scent,
Mm.
or is there a different standard of You know, obviously you have the fur coats and everything, and you know, we need to wear less and less clothing around. These are different social standard with clothing and
like
or,
how
with
is like how is technology affected by different needs and stuff like that? Like, for example,
exactly.
how important is replicating smell in a device more so than sound, kind of thing?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I would
definitely.
imagine. Okay. No, that
And
that
one for go ahead.
no, that's a like a really interesting point. Like you never actually think, or few people I think to such a degree as to actually sort of how can I put this, like not like craft the world around the characters and around the like the types of characters that it is so much as just like inserting characters into the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
In-
what I found from talking to a few writers is that some of them tend to think that if you focus on, like, say you really want a character-driven story, well, now your plot is only kind of a background, and now your environment's only kind of a background. Well, no, like you have to make sure they all cohesively work together. So sure, you can have a plot-driven story, but you need to have strong developed characters and a very vivid scene set with it. Like, you can't let one lack because of the other, and I think that
yeah.
really ties into that.
Mm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. I know that Tempo's actually mentioned this on a couple of occasions that been with us, that he attempts to write that way as well. That and I think who Scratch. I'm not sure if you remember. There were a couple of other people who've actually mentioned that it's part of their sort of integral writing style. That the smell of petrol, for instance, would be something that would irritate most animals' noses, for
Yeah.
instance. And I think it was Tempo.
Mm. Yeah, man,
I'm not sure, but
didn't we also at some point talk
yeah.
to someone who had like a music project set around something like that? Like what kind of music would dog people listen to? Because like the different ranges of sounds that they can hear and different ways that they can uh like perceive sound and stuff. Someone was somehow linked to like a we had this discussion about like dolphin, like the dolphin language. Someone trying to figure like someone that actually figured out like essentially the dialect or the dictionary of dolphin speak. Does this ring a bell? Am I mad?
Mm,
Ivek,
maybe.
am I mad?
You're completely and utterly nuts, but
Okay,
that's just me saying.
just checking.
No, I don't. I know that the only musician that we've had on recently was
Mm.
crap.
This isn't recent though. This is like
That
ages ago.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, okay.
The
But
musician
I
we had
mean,
on was
so
Pepper.
it's yeah, Pepper's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like when it comes to, I guess when 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 you're attempting to sort of like gauge, say, your own writing, for instance. I mean, like, do you have to read a whole bunch of other novels first to see what's useful right now, or do you allow more people, or do you allow yourself to just go with your own flow?
Well, admittedly, I haven't touched much into writing, but the last major thing I did write was I wrote a story for the first Guild anthology, which was
Hmm.
based around music.
Yeah.
And I think it more started as an exercise to people were complaining about the theme too much, even though we had a vote on it. It was, oh, I can't write anything for that. So I'm like, okay, well, here's an idea. I'm going to write while I'm at work, and here we go.
Hmm.
Um, so I definitely think, like, even when back when I did write a lot more, it tended to be less focused on trends, and it more intended to just be I kind of see something and I got an
Hmm.
idea based on something I saw or heard. I rarely ever had this grand idea of something I wanted to write, or I set aside something to write a specific idea.
Hmm.
Also, granted, I wasn't writing for anthologies back then, and that probably would have changed my mind. Is, oh, now there's a theme going on, and I want to write for this theme to get published, which there's a good 50-50 split on that one. There's a
Hmm.
lot of writers that will say, oh, I'll submit to this because something I have already kind of fits the theme, or other writers that'll say, oh, wow, this is a good theme. I want to write a story for it, and I want to use this as my inspiration.
Hmm.
So I know even I'm all over the place, and I'm not sure how other writers kind of interpret, what they see. It kind of seems like every person's got a very different idea with that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things that's kind of hard to explain.
Okay. Wow. All right. So, like, when it comes to like coming up with themes, maybe for the anthology and everything like that, like what is your process when you want to come up with that for people to submit?
Well, I can go through the couple that I had gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So for the Guild Anthology, again, it was strictly, we wanted to make it a Writers Guild project. So I said, okay, well, you have a few weeks, just list themes that you think might work well, and then we'll have votes based upon that. Um, so that was very much, that's just what people wanted to see. The story for Claw the Way to Victory, the sports anthology, which plugging is also up for both an Ursa Major and a Kyoto Award right now.
Uh-huh.
That was actually just a conversation in the Writers Guild shoutbox between myself and Jay of Jotha Books,
Mm-hmm.
and we said, "Oh, I remember how it started." But one of us was like, "Oh, so sports would be quite. I wonder how animal people would play sports differently and how the rules would change. I don't know. It sounds like a good anthology. It does. Hey, did we just start an anthology? Oh, hey, yes, we did." And that's how it started.
Okay. So, I mean, with the anthology writing and the editing and things like that, I mean, do you have any like, how did you start with editing? Why, like, did you like do degree in it, or you just have like a passive ability for English, or exactly what was your
Passive bonus
main
to
sort of like
English.
push to passion? Exactly. Everybody's a passive bonus.
No, I think I was just born and bred to be a complete judgmental jerk. Um, no, I'm totally self-taught, and how I actually started with it, I've always had a very like operational and very set, you know, mindset, less creative and more practical.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started getting more into books and reading more, when I worked at the bookstore, I kind of transitioned into, oh hey, while writing kind of isn't something that interests me as much anymore. I still like to be involved with the process with the books. Let me try editing and see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, I was okay at it. Even the guy, basically like copy editing, proofreading, I was okay at. Obviously, I've gotten much better in the last 5 years, but it's something that I could do from the start, and just from there, I did a lot of research between just different materials we had in the store, online.
Uh-huh.
I did take one online class when I worked at the community college because it was a little bit cheaper than it would have been otherwise. So I had a
All right.
little bit of training in that regard, which more of that I just took that as okay, I know what I know. Let's see if what they're saying kind of lines up, and most of it did, which I felt good about. I learned a couple of things, and I am still learning. I will always be learning. I could be doing this for 20 years, and I'll still be learning what's going on, because English is one of those languages that always is changing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like helicopter mom is in the dictionary now. The word literally has no meaning anymore.
Okay.
So it's something that you have to adapt to. And what I've actually found talking with a few other editors is that have gone through the process is that while they're working with the adaptations, it's harder for them because they had all the schooling ingrained in them. This is it. This is it. This is it. And now
Mm-hmm.
when things completely change and usurp everything they've learned, when they were in school, now they've had all this strict training that are making it hard to them to kind of adapt. And I'm having a lot easier ability to step into that because I am constantly trying to learn new things.
Okay. All right. Sorry. So, I mean, considering that we're kind of on the topic of education and things like that, and I know that we said this to Fred Patton, and his answer was in the negative. Tempo's answer is in the positive. So maybe a small tiebreaker for now until we ask somebody else. The question is, well, actually, let's see if we can tie this up because I think what was it? Kyle also said that it was in the positive. The question of everybody has at least one good story.
So we're saying, does everyone
Yeah.
have that one good story in them?
Does
Yeah.
does everybody have the ability to at least have one good story?
I think yes. I think yes that everybody does. Do they have the ability to tell that one good story? Definitely not. I think some
Mm.
people can have the idea,
Mm.
but just not have the mindset to really craft the story. Like they can have the most basic idea of, oh, this would make a great story, but
Mm.
not everybody's going to have the ability to, okay, say why will this make a great story and how will this story lead from where it starts.
Yeah.
I think that takes a very particular mindset. But as far as
Yeah.
just the general, will this make a good story? I think that is in everybody.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like
That's good.
that same analogy
Mm.
of like visual artists. In your head, it looks awesome, but your hands are too dumb to like translate it onto paper. It's that kind of
Yes.
Mm.
that sort of analogy in my head.
Yeah.
Do you think that we'd be able to? Sorry, go. No, go
No,
for it.
I think that ties over very well, and I definitely agree with that.
But and obviously my secondary question would then be like, do you think that there is a way that we can get those people to actively begin to look at trying to write those good stories that they might have, like
I,
as an editor?
I still think it's very much. I've actually worked with several people that really don't have that kind of ability to really. I actually worked my very very first client, actually first major client, was actually someone who was having their entire story ghostwritten for them. It never
Yeah.
panned out, and I haven't heard from them in like 4 years.
Ugh.
But um, yeah, they were trying to have the entire story ghostwritten for them because they had this grand idea, but just had no idea how to actually develop it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say continue that idea. I think yeah, it takes a very certain type of person to actually even be able to get that story on paper. Because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of those people that just can get that idea can maybe they're the person that will be on that first blinking page that says in a dark stormy night, and that's all they get on their page. I think that's probably a lot of those people that just don't have the ability to connect those dots,
Yeah.
and there's only so much an editor can do. I mean, we can take those kind of bland ideas and kind of get them into a point, or the good ideas and get them to the point where they're actually a tellable story, but we can't get them to write that story. So I
Mm.
think the main thing is with those people that really can't develop it is a lot of them just really can't write it. They can't bring themselves to actually get the idea down. I think that's more the issue in that.
Okay. So, oh, yo, that is interesting, because and so my question that I'm obviously going to ask now, because you mentioned the idea, but ghostwriting. What do you feel about that? Like, as ghostwriters are, or what ghostwriters do, what do you think that? Uh, is it do you think that ghostwriters are a good thing, bad thing, or what?
I'm kind of indifferent to them. There's a
Mm.
place for them. I mean, if there wasn't a place for them, then someone like James Patterson would not have an industry right now.
Ooh,
So I know
yeah.
low blows, but yeah, there's definitely a place for them. On the average, for that one person that wants to get their story out, yeah, it could help them out. I mean, in having for the people that actually can kind of get started with it and really have a locate or have some sort of direction, but not be able to get there,
Hmm.
within the community, places like the Writers Guild can really help them kind of develop, that want to at least try that kind of drive to really get going and give a little bit more direction with the writers and how they've overcome the process.
Hmm.
But on the other side, you get that client I had with the ghost writers, and it gets to a point where it's no longer your story,
Mm.
and that's a whole different feeling. Is that yeah, you had the original idea, but just this isn't yours anymore, and your enthusiasm for it is going to just drop. Which I
Okay.
had a feeling is probably what happened to them. But yeah, so they really have their place, and it really again it takes the right kind of pairing, similar to a writer and an editor. It takes a specific kind of pairing to kind of make it work.
Hmm. All right. So, do you think that ghostwriters could do the work of an editor, maybe?
I would say no. Um, Even right now, again with all the anthologies coming out, there's a lot of writers that are trying their hand at editing. Some have the knack for it, some don't. It's a very very different kind of skill. You go from
Mhm.
a much more a much more, I'll say, artistic skill, one that requires a lot more, being able to come up with the ideas, and now you're trying to take someone else's ideas and try to enhance them.
Mhm.
It's it seems like it can kind of go hand in hand, but it's a very different skill. Some people can be jack of all trades and kind of do both. Other people, like I found now that writing for me is very hard. I tend to I try to go from point A to point B to point C, and
Mhm.
developing that really creative story to go from those areas. I can help other stories get from that are already
Yeah.
there. I can do that, but when it comes to just kind of crafting my own, I'm lost now.
Hmm.
I'll be the first to admit that I'm lost now.
Okay.
So it's another one thing that once you actually get into it and try it, you kind of realize that it is different. And again, you may be able to do it, you may not. So with ghostwriters, I think they're definitely more along the lines of the creatives, because they have to take that basic idea and come up with the creative side on their own.
Mhm.
And just like the general writer, they may be able to edit, but it's a very different skill still. And even just a regular writer from a ghostwriter, some people have a hard time taking in people's ideas and going for it. So that's why some people, some of the writers that try to do commissions for writing have a very hard time with it, because they have a hard time with someone else's idea, getting inspired by that idea and crafting a story out of it.
Mhm.
While other people can, either can get right into it and get it done. Some people can get inspired by those other ideas. So
All
it's it's
right.
it's, it's very, some people can do it, some people can't.
Huh. Okay, that's pretty interesting. So, like when you were working at the bookstore as a manager there, what kind of people do you actually get? I mean, like I'd actually like to sort of hear about what do customers want these days, aside from say James Patterson or anything like that.
A lot of Probably most of the people that we got in, they wanted the current trend. So like you got to the point where people, there's the jokes where, oh, I'm looking for the book that had the yellow cover with the boy on it.
Uh-huh.
That's not even just a joke. Like that was just daily life. People would come in with very vague descriptions of books, and we would know what's going on because half the time it's the book that everyone else is buying right now.
Hmm.
It was much less common people to come in with looking for that, that older title that people don't tend to look for anymore, or that, that book that, we somehow managed to get a copy of in the store, but no one had ever heard of it before.
Yeah.
We got a lot more of the people that just were coming through and they wanted, the current bestseller, the current thing that everyone was talking about, which I think
Hmm.
is kind of a change from probably what you'd get if you worked in a more independent type of bookstore. I think that you probably would get from what I've actually heard from people that have worked there, get a lot more of the people that come in and are looking for very specific things. People that come in are looking for nothing, and they want to they want to hear the recommendations from the people there.
Okay.
It wasn't something we got as often as you would think, really.
What recommendations?
Yeah, so we would, as far as recommendations go,
Hmm.
and it may tend to be getting grand to us just from working with more of a corporate attitude. Is, again, you push the stuff that's, more of a bestseller, because now this is the higher margin. But we would always get, the people that would come in and say, oh, I liked this book, and how would I go from there and finding new things to read, which admittedly confused me a lot more, because
Hmm.
I spent all this time trying to learn the best sellers and trying to really get good on those, that now you're like, oh, people that actually want a creative opinion, what do I do now?
Hmm.
It's so
So, I mean,
again,
like,
oh, go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was going to wrap up. It's just it's a very different type of industry than, I don't want to say media makes it out to be, or people that have worked in more independent makes it out to be. It was definitely, it acted like a chain bookstore.
Mm. All right. So that kind of reminds, what's it? Scratch if exclusive books would probably be that kind of thing,
Yeah,
where
I think so.
your your more your more niche bookstore would be what's that bookstore? Tiger Valley Books, for instance.
Yeah, well, anything that's sort of not chain, I suppose. Tiger Valley, I think, just was the one bookstore.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I remember in Stellenbosch, for instance, we had a lovely bookstore there that I got a book that I eventually gave to my Afrikaans and history teacher, one of them. um, which randomly I just walked in there and I looked at. I tend to do this thing where I walk into a bookstore, I go to the fiction section, and I go, too mainstream, too mainstream, too mainstream. This looks interesting because I like the cover. Um, and it is kind of like scary that a lot of people who work in a bookstore only work there as, staff and clientele, rather than people who actively have, an interest in literature. And I guess maybe that's sort of the sad part about it, is
Yeah.
that we're very, very visual these days. It's become a very visual or visually driven um, society that we're in. That, oh
Yes.
yeah, no, we're reading books on, or we like graphic novels, for instance. We love comic book art, because that's obviously becoming something a lot more interesting back since the 19 what's it 50s now, practically, which started the entire trend, and then it became mainstream to start liking that. And I don't know. I'm I'm a big fan of written work. Like, I've always loved writing. Um, Granted, I've not been reading a lot lately,
Mm.
but it's an interesting perspective when we see that people are moving away from the idea of written literature. So, where I'm leading to is, like, do you think that you'd probably start doing graphic novels, or do you think that you'd rather stay more traditional or more true to tradition, um, now than ever?
As publishing goes, I'm still starting out. I'm very undecided. I've actually had, I think, one person ask about a graphic novel. It's
Mm-hmm.
just there's a lot more to it as far as just the production of it. That
Mm-hmm.
while I'd probably be open to it in the future, just as I am right now, I'm still trying to learn what I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just a bit much for now. Definitely be open to it in the future. Now, editing wise, visual novels are, they've exploded in the fandom, and I actually am working with two of them right now. One, I started working with Igo, who you've had bid on in the last
Mm-hmm.
month or so. So I've worked
Okay.
with him recently, but mainly I've been working with Blackgate, who he likes to think that he's inspired this entire trend and generation of furry visual novels, and I like to put his head down on it because he's delusional. But
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of going along with that idea of media is moving away to something more visual, and multimedia platforms in general are kind of becoming more dominant.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is just with today's society of you want to get more for less, and now you can
Mm-hmm.
get, you can get the visuals, you can get the story, you can get the music, all kind of in one.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of think sort of the attention economy has really like polluted people's will to just sort of sit and focus on one thing. Like if you can't engage people in more ways than like either your story completely sort of, pardon my French, grabs them by the balls and keeps it there, or you're gonna lose people's attention really quickly, kind of thing. But with
Mm.
something like games being like the opposite end of that spectrum, where it's a medium that not only engages more senses, like
Mm-hmm.
but also like physically engages you in like problem solving and the mechanics of actually controlling the thing. If you don't have, yeah, if it's hard to compete for anything, like honestly, any other medium that's like solely into like one medium essentially, uh, like
Mm-hmm.
audio or um, like visually with reading and stuff like that. It's difficult to compete, I
Yeah.
think.
Hmm. Huh.
But yeah.
Okay. So, with sort of those kinds of things in mind, like, where do you want to grow goal towards? Where's your ultimate goal in, say, the next 5 years?
It's kind of funny that I've actually just kind of moved up in promotions with my day jobs because with with trend, everything is just so unsure. And this is actually a very similar answer to what I gave my interview moving up there. Um, probably 6 months ago, this was a different
Mm-hmm.
industry. Like there was like the focus was more towards trying to kind of figure out like what the next good genre of book is going to be, the popular one, the next good story is. Now it's people have moved more into the multimedia platforms. 6 months from now, those probably a good chance those probably get a little bit too inundated and kind of fizzle out a little bit. And now we'll move on to the next thing. So trying to figure out specifically where I would be in 5 years from now, I would say be able to keep adapting is probably the best answer I'd come up with. Being able to keep working with new ideas and just new concepts, I think, is really what's going to stand out. And I think that's one opportunity that I'd like to work more, trying to get more into with the furry writer skill, trying to work more into figuring out, okay, this straight, novel anthology short story is, it's something that's still going to keep going, but there's other directions people can take. And I'd like to see if we can kind of get to the point where helping them get, figure out how to start, that multimedia connection. See if they can figure out, what kind of trends people who are going with, what direction to take with their writing in the future.
Okay.
And it's going to keep growing. It's going to keep evolving, and it's exciting to figure out where it's going to go. I just can't plan for it.
Okay. All right. So, what kind of goal would you be looking for? How many years is a good yearly sort of rating to ask for?
I think even trying to go 1 year out right now, I think for 1 year out for me, I'd like to at least know what I'm doing a little bit more with the publishing, to be able to get the process down, to be able to kind of figure out timelines. I know right now I'm working actually with Fred Patton on an anthology called A Symbol of a Nation, coming out at Anthrocon about like national animals. And this is the first time I've actually been on the publisher side of the anthologies. So now trying to, I've done contracts, trying to make sure all the contracts are all in line, trying to make sure that I have the cover art in time with everything, trying to make sure that production schedules are staying online, that I can get enough time off or time not at my day job to be able to do all the things that need to be done. Do I really need to just say I need help and have someone else help me? I think that's my goal within 1 year, is to have that figured out. And going from there, I'd probably like to start doing, actually working more with multimedia type platforms, whether it's a visual novel, whether it's a graphic novel, or something else in the next few years. I actually like to be able to start doing audiobooks in the next few years as well. Like that's definitely a goal as well.
Okay. Like, the reason why I ask is because, I mean, you obviously get the ISBN codes, which costs a bit of money. That kind of sort of initial investment and everything like that becomes something of almost, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say the word burden, but it becomes something of a proper investment into something. And I mean, currently our economies aren't necessarily looking as stellar as they should. So investments are always something that you either have to know, or you kind of, like, I know that I guess a lot of very good, what would you call them, marketers and corporate people would tell you either go in head first and run with it, or 50-50 is not going to cut it. Like, that's the kind of question that I want to ask here, is that, like,
Yep.
I mean, Yaku's book is obviously a good first step, but are there plans up until, like, you get onto your feet like that?
As much as I like to say yes, there are plans, there really aren't, simply because, again, I'm still at that plan stage, trying to get everything solidified. And admittedly, marketing is the one place that I have the most room for growth right now. And I'm actually trying to work with a couple different people that have been through this path to really get that hammered down, for future books. I know this book of Yako's is the first, I don't say first in a series, but first in kind of a group of books around the same world and universe. My one tease for that. And like to be able to take this book and use it as a platform for the rest, and to be able to kind of influence that to others. So right now I'm still running on enthusiasm and, again, for the love of the work, and it's coming to the point where I'm transitioning into gotta get it solid, if I don't get it solid soon, this is going to be that 50-50 wavering. I need to plant my feet and just get going into it.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's good to know. And I mean, I'm very happy that like you have faith in Yaku's book, which is obviously something that he'd also like to hear since he is on the chat at this point. I'd like to say hello to Aprl for no apparent reason. Also, something that I do want to point out, those of you who are listening, you can log into the Furry.fm live chat if you guys want to ask any questions to Sean over here. If you have any questions, please do put them down. I know that somebody's asked about queries and or elevator pitches.
The elevator pitch is... Oh, sorry, go ahead. Do you have more to that question?
No. I want to know what an elevator pitch is, actually.
Well, an elevator pitch is kind of started with, okay, you're in an elevator with a corporate executive. You have the time until the elevator gets to the floor they're going to give that pitch, to get their attention on board. So it's really something that's just a quick thing to really just wow them and to want you to know more about the idea. Okay. And that's something that's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit in the writing industry. We want to see everything up front. More and more they say, okay, well, give me a summary and send me the entire thing. I'll let the writing speak for it. It's less, you're trying to send this little, 150 word excerpt, or you're not trying to sell the book as much. You're trying to let your writing sell the book. I know Twitter is doing a lot of the hashtag pitch fest. You use the length of a Twitter message, and you have to try to sell the book, and agents may pick you up for it. PitMad, there we go. That's the hashtag for it. It took me a second to remember that, but like that's kind of, I don't say replace the elevator pitch, but it's taking it into a new direction. Okay. And again, and with as far as queries go, I mean, is there like the question more based towards what do you do for a query?
Yeah, I guess maybe that's possibly one of the things that you can probably talk about. Like, how do people get in touch with you to put a query forward?
The basics start with websites. So mine, just goalpublications.com. Around there is submission guidelines. The biggest thing in writing to submit is you need to be able to recite those submission guidelines and know every word of them and what they mean without even looking at them. If you're off the slightest little bit, that could affect the chances of your story being accepted. Whether it's an anthology, whether it's a novel submission, you need to be exact. They write those submission guidelines for a reason. They want it to be that way. Yeah. So you'll find that most publishers will have a different way of doing things. For me, it's just you send me an email with, just a simple summary of the book and then the book. I want to be able to say, okay, well, the summary will give me an idea of, did the person even read what I'm looking for, which, again, I'm more looking for, furry fiction that's, with a more contemporary, going to be able to grab me. It's not a specific genre in mind, but really is going to actually show, why there's anther characters in this book. Be able to work them into your world as a set piece rather than just, another visual. And the summaries kind of just show me that you were listening and that you think that that's going to be involved in your book. Then I actually can read your book from there and see, does this actually fit what I'm looking for? So that's it. And that's me personally. You'd probably go to, Thurston Howell, and they're going to have totally different guidelines. And you go to, Fur Planet, Sofa Wolf, etc., and they're going to have totally different guidelines. So it really comes down to reading the guidelines very carefully.
Okay. Huh. That's interesting, because I mean, like, obviously every guideline is different, and you've already mentioned the fact that you're terrifyingly picky when it comes to what you want to do or what you want to see in pitches and probably in the books themselves. Do you feel that what would be a game breaker for you?
Oh, this is going to be fun. So.
Yeah.
I more go with some of the horror stories I've had with working with anthologies. So some things not to do. So when the guidelines say to submit your story in like a docx format, RTF, don't send them a PDF. Don't send them pictures, JPEG file pictures of your story written out.
Ooh.
I have gotten that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't fax it in, I suppose. So that's the next logical step.
Exactly. So don't do those sort of things. Don't, when we're saying we want a story that, or story that's for general audiences, don't write the next erotic novella. Don't want to see that if I'm not looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't send me something that, I'm looking for a furry story. Don't send me something that doesn't even have, a dog as a pet in there somewhere, like nothing animal related whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So even going off the path that I'm saying I'm picky, if I can see somewhere in the story where it's like, okay, you have this great opportunity here to really fit what I'm looking for in there. Let's work on this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not above saying let's work on this and get it to where I want it to be. I'm only gonna say no if it's either just it's good but it's just not gonna fit what I need, or if there's absolutely no possible way this is gonna work to my level, or on the third side, if this is gonna take more work than I can possibly have to give to get it to that level.
Okay.
So it so that those are the real game breakers to me. Is basically it's clear that you didn't have enough respect for me to be able to do what I ask of you, like the few simple things for the submission guidelines. Other than that, as long as your story has that chance of being what I want,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely submit it. The worst that can be said is no.
Okay.
Mm.
Email etiquette.
Yes.
Sorry, I know that this is a very, very interesting, or like a strange question.
I
How
think
do
the
you
word you're looking
feel?
for is pedantic.
Yeah, well, I'm very pedantic when it comes to the very first email that comes through. Being a business English teacher for a lecturer for a while, I know what it feels like when somebody gives you like a terrible email. It's one of those things where an email comes through and you're kind of sitting there going like, "Oh, you didn't even say hi. You didn't even do this. Your spelling is atrocious.
Yes.
Your grammar is absolute shit. Or you haven't even recognized who the hell I am. Hello, person." That kind of thing. And you kind of sit there going like, that for me, if I don't know, like personally, if I was an editor, I would kind of sit there going like, irrespective of how good this story might be, I'm going to put this at the bottom of the barrel. I'll come back to it
And you'd
eventually,
be
maybe in the next 2 years. Yeah?
Yeah, and you'd be in the majority by saying that. Absolutely. That email is your first impression.
Mm-hmm.
So similar to if you go into a job interview and you're wearing a T-shirt with a big offensive written on it. You're wearing these ripped up shorts. Unless you're working for a clothing store that specializes in that sort of brand.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what you go to the interview looking like.
Yeah.
It's very same thing when you are sending the email. It's knowing who you're sending it to. I mean, even if you absolutely have to, even saying dear editor, something along those lines, it's better than nothing. So if you
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you absolutely cannot find who to actually address it to. Sometimes they do hide it very well or want to keep it generic.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. So at least some sort of just proper greeting. And then when you get into the email, let me know who you are, why you're sending me this email, and if it's to actually send a story in, yeah, get right to it. Tell me what you're looking for. What your story is about. Or even if you're just asking a question, say, hello, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for the fact that they're actually going to be reading your email. Like, actually, know that you're taking up their time,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you're going to be giving them, the bread and butter of their publishing industry because your story is that great. Thank them for at least looking at your email. Like, thank them for being able to read it, and saying, I hope to hear back from you. Just some sort of just polite closing.
Mm-hmm.
It's things like that will go a long way with your first impression. Like, even if your story sounds, oh yeah, and of course I'll say spelling and grammar. Make sure you're on point with that. Otherwise, we're going to know that we're going to need way too much work with your story to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So just be respectful is, I think, the main thing. Just have the respect to know that I'm going to be reading your email and that we're doing business together.
Yeah.
That this isn't just a casual conversation.
Mm.
Mm. All right. And I mean that's always pretty interesting because I mean the furry fandom, I guess, and I've seen this on many occasions. The furry fandom sort of takes pleasantries to the point of, oh whoa, what's this kind of like levels.
Overly
You know,
friendliness.
we're
Yes.
overly friendly. It's like, oh, hey, I wrote a book. It's pretty good. I've attached the PDF. Please just have a look at it, nuzzle. Kind of sit there going like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, like colon 3.
Not in, not into RP right
And I've,
now.
I've gotten that too. So
Are you serious?
I yeah,
Okay.
I've received especially for anthologies that start with literally hey and then in parentheses like licks your face, stuff like that. I've gotten all that.
Hmm.
So it's not as I would say as common as you might think because obviously you're surprised that I got even one. But
Yeah.
when you think of how open the fur community is, you might think you might get more of that. But
Yeah.
emails have been one place where I've actually been pleasantly surprised. I do generally get pretty pretty respectful emails, ones that are fairly well laid out. I'll get the occasional one that just clearly they had no interest in being professional, or they just don't know how to write a professional email, which is also possible. We sometimes
Hmm.
get kids that haven't had a job before that are
Yeah.
submitting to these things, or by kids that can be people in their 20s, because I mean, who knows? People live at home with their parents all the time.
Yeah. Or in a
So,
port.
Economy is
yes.
This
tough,
happens
dude.
too.
So
Hey.
the economy
Yeah.
is tough. I use that financial support being back with parents right now.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's people that just you get a lot of people that actually are pretty respectful in the emails, and probably the biggest place that people fail with the respect in the emails comes from after we've given a decision.
Hmm.
Generally, once you've gotten that, it more comes with people that when we say no, saying whether it's a form rejection saying we apologize, your story's not right for us, but thank you for submitting. Sincerely, publisher. Sincerely, editor. Don't reply. I mean, if you're gonna reply, just say, okay, thank you for the opportunity. Just something brief like that. Generally, even that's frowned upon. Like,
Hmm.
we've understood like this transaction's over. We're not gonna say no, don't submit to us again. But just say, this current transaction is over. We're moving on. Move on with
Is
yourself. Which,
with, with
oh, go ahead.
with that kind of with that kind of like answer, I guess, like the idea of like the transactions over. If a person was to then respond with, do you generally, when you do respond to them, do you say like, do you give like a detailed answer as to why they're not able to, or they don't qualify, or they're not just, or there are things that they need to work on, or anything like that? And if you don't, if they do ask for, a critique of sorts, would you say yes to that, or is that just a waste of time?
This is actually a very good question. So, the first couple anthologies I worked with, I did actually give full breakdowns of okay, so I like this about the story, or if I have other people working on it, we saw that we liked this, however, because of this, this, and this, or your story's too similar to someone else's, and theirs was a little better than yours. We gave them that kind of critique, and I found
Hmm.
there was actually a lot more pushback. People saying, "Oh, you interpreted this wrong," or "Oh, you know,
Oh,
you
uh, okay.
you weren't that up in the story, that sort of thing."
Hmm.
While if a form rejection, people say, "Okay, well, you know." It leaves it more ambiguous, and maybe it wasn't quite good enough. Maybe there just was that many more better stories than it. And if I don't get a lot of people that reply asking for more details, but I've given a couple people that have replied. I've given them my thoughts. I had
Hmm.
no problem with that. Outside the fandom, you generally won't get that a lot because people are busy. They're working on a lot more projects. Have a lot like compared to maybe 30 or 40 or 60 submissions to an anthology, they're going to get several hundred.
Hmm.
So if people are all responding saying, "So what did you like about my story?" They're going to go, "Who are you and what story did you submit?" Because they have 600 people in line that they have no idea. So in the fandom, yeah, I mean, if you really want to, you can ask. You probably won't get
Hmm.
your head bitten off for it. You might not get a reply, or you might not get someone that will give the time to have the feedback. But a lot of times, yeah, they'll say a few words about your story and what you could have improved. And I personally have no problem doing that.
Okay.
And
So
actually, you find
as
I'm sorry, I just
no,
want to
no,
interrupt
go
real quick.
go.
So, go ahead.
Mm-mm.
If you ask probably like 10 writers in the community what they prefer between a form rejection and a detailed response, you're probably going to split down the middle, if not more in favor of the form rejection, from what I
Yeah.
found.
But I mean, like, uh, as a writer yourself, I'm sure that you submitted every now and again. and most writers do kind of get, I guess, rejected the first time round, especially if you're going like, oh, cool, I'm going to submit to Penguin because it's the only publisher I know, and they go, no, fuck off. And I mean, like, and the thing is that one, I guess, to an extent, and probably the idea of the furry fandom comes in again with that, is that we're supposedly nice people a lot of the time, but when it comes to business, business is business. But
Yes.
um, one of the things that I'd sort of like to ask about that is that how does one sort of like create that split between, you know, being too, I guess, corporate talk about it? And I know that, like, personally, I know that, like, because I've worked with corporate companies, because I've worked as a corporate puppet, um, that when you say no in the nicest way, but everybody knows you're saying fuck off. You know, you're wasting my time.
Yes.
And how do you manage that kind of response?
And this is funny. You'll get something different from this with everybody. So
Mhm.
so from the writer submitting side, yeah, it's especially when you get your story back and you're like, oh, my baby's been rejected. How dare you?
Mm.
This is kind of when you get experience come into play. People that have either worked on the other side of the coin as an editor or publisher, or have just been in the industry for a while and have been submitting a lot of stories, you'll get the okay, well, you'll get mad about it for a couple of days and then you'll move on with your life. You'll find a new home for your story, or if they give you responses, you'll be mad at them for a while and then you'll slowly say, oh, well, darn it, they're right. And okay, fine, yeah, they're right. I'm going to move on or fix my story up. From the side of the coin of being the editor in these situations, it's something that I've had an easier time with personally. I've been with a lot of corporations as well, so it's been something that is natural for me. I can very politely say no, thank you, please stop calling me. Or and then you get some of the people that are starting with anthologies that say, oh, I want to start this anthology. Oh, now I have to reject people. These are all my best friends. Am I going to lose my friendship because I'm rejecting them? And that's something that's very real in the furry fandom because everyone is so close. And some people, it's very hard for them to say, no, I can't accept this. They're going to say, oh, you're my best friend. I can't say no to you. I'll accept your story even though it's terrible. And sometimes it also come into play with having additional editors that can make up for your weaknesses.
Yeah.
There's a couple of anthologies I know they've had people there that had easier time saying no. But yeah, again, it comes with on the writer side from experience. One writer in particular that I bring up constantly, Mary Loud. She's like the short story queen of the fandom.
Of course. I mean, but she's been like Ursa Majors since she started writing.
Yeah, she's been cleaning house.
But
Would love to
I
have
think she's also definitely she loves these kind of things. So I definitely ask her. But I think she's been rejected over 1,000 times for her short stories.
Damn.
No way.
And like she makes the point where like her writers group, like you get a piece of candy whenever you get a rejection. But like that rejection, like when you get more experience in that regard, which is kind of more I'm going for, you see it as kind of a badge saying, yes, you submitted, you took the chance, and you reached for the stars. No, it didn't work that time, but some of the stories, okay, maybe it was just on the cusp, and the editor's going to remember you because they're going to remember that yes, your writing is good. It almost got in. Keep trying. I'm going to keep a lookout for you in the future, which you wouldn't have gotten if you hadn't tried to submit in the first place.
Yeah.
Or you may get the editors that do get feedback, and you can kind of improve on your stories from there. Or again, with her, she's gotten this whole system in place where a story gets rejected from one place, it's out to another like next day. You keep it moving. You find homes for all your stories. And again, it comes with experience, definitely.
Okay. And I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like with Mary, I mean, like I've not actually read any of her work, but the thing is that like I've seen her name countless times on the on the like Ursa Major page, and it's in fact, if I'm not mistaken, she has like 5 submissions at this point, or like 4 submissions on Ursa Majors.
Some ridiculous
I think
number.
last year, all 5 submissions were her, if I remember correctly.
Let me see. 2015, 2016. Uh,
This one it's three. I know I published two of the stories of hers that are on there, and one's
mhm,
in Dogs of War, I think.
yeah. She's got 3 in Best Short Fiction, 1 in Best Other Literary Work. She has 4 this year. And I mean, I guess
Yes.
like it's interesting to note that because I know that the last time we had an interview, we were speaking to God damn it, Scratch,
Who? Like,
uh,
what last
a
time?
Raven,
All right, Raven and
Raven
Tempo.
with red shoulders. Yeah, no,
Huh?
after him. He's a black raven with
Oh,
red
Mark!
shoulders, but it's
RK
not actually a
Mark!
raven. RK Mark, yes. And he was talking about the idea that having too many submissions kind of like almost destroys your chances of actually winning. How do you feel about that? Like if you had say Cat, but like obviously if it's different writers, different editors, then there's a good chance of doing that. But it, like okay, here's an interesting question. Do you think that we should involve or that the Ursa Majors should involve a best publishers um, like uh, edition?
Meaning like they choose which publisher is the best, or like the publishers
Or
choose.
no. Like the obviously the publishers choose that's kind of the more that's the more coyotal effect of things. But if the Ursa Majors, because it has a wider variety of different literary works, you know, best published illustration, best game, website, magazine, comic strip, graphic story, etc., etc. Like, do you think that they should have like one for editors or for publishing houses? You know, best publishing house.
I definitely think there gets to a point where it's just you're picking from such a small category, it's not really even noteworthy anymore. But something
Mm-hmm.
like that, I would definitely say, yeah, it's just too small of a category. Um, Even something like the websites, I think that's less of, I won't say less
Yeah,
of, the people trying to win, and more just a couple that are coming out that people don't know about. Hey, they're in the ballot. You now know it exists. Like, I
yeah,
know we push the Free Rare School website to be on there every year. It never wins, because something like Fur Affinity or one of like the major art sites will win every year because it
yeah.
happens to. But every time it's on the ballot, people see the name and they check it out because maybe they've written a story and they want to see what this Writers Guild's about.
Mm,
So something on those lines, like, yeah, I can see it in that regard. But you get too many of those categories that are basically token categories, and
yeah.
you're kind of losing the overall effect of winning an award in them. So then it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I won an Ursa Major. Well, for what category? Like this is now an important question. What category did you win in?
Mm.
Yeah.
No, because some categories might just be way
Oh.
easier. Like, or
Yeah.
like, yeah, so niche. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I get it. Like,
I mean,
you can at some point only appease so many people, and yeah, take away
Yeah.
the
yeah.
specialness of it all.
But then again, I mean, like best magazine, for instance, would probably be something that you guys could go into if you're doing anthologies under under your name as GoAL. Um, so I mean, like, as Dog Patch Press is in there, Fangs and Fonts, Flavra's in there, and I mean, Flavra, like again, like I mean, you're kind of sort of moving the line between there's Anthroaquatic. You guys are in fact in here.
Yep, we have
All the way to
Call the
victory.
Way to Victory is in there for as an anthology for other,
Mm.
and several other short stories or something that we've actually worked with. Whether there's two stories from Claw, there's A Gentleman of Strength by Dwayne, and then Mary's story is the figure skating one. Oh geez, names. It's there, and then the other one is from the webzine for Literature. There's the um, sheep who want to be a butterfly, or a sheep or fly's lullaby. There we go. That one's in
Okay.
there, which the story behind that story is hilarious. But for no, that's the point is, we are in there a lot, and the fact that publishers are part of these other categories. So something that we publish wins, we can now probably say, hey, something we publish has won an award. That
Mm.
helps us out
All
too.
right, yeah.
So
So
the publisher of the
putting
award-winning.
publishers in that category, it's is kind of iffy. I mean, with the magazine, like the Fangs and Fawns and the Flare, like they're not in any other category. Like they don't put out work that could be considered in other categories. So having something that can actually work with them gives them a little bit of recognition. The fact that they can actually can win an award. Like there's an opportunity there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's actually pretty interesting to know. Like I like that kind of idea, and I honestly like. I mean, bar creating, a separate award for all publishers. I guess maybe not like putting it under this. Maybe I don't know, like under the Furry Writers Guild, that might actually work. Don't you think?
See, I still think we get enough recognition with the work we put out, and more of our recognition comes with seeing the work that we've helped develop be recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So like, even as before GoAL publications, as an editor, like with the Guild anthology, the Writers Guild anthology, the first one was up for both the Kyoto and Ursa Major. Call the Way Victory, I worked on it as an editor. It's not my published book, it's published by Jaffa. It's open. It's up for both of those awards.
Okay.
So like that's where my recognition and my pride will lie, because I had this involvement in this project, and I've got a feeling that several of the publishers do feel kind of the same way. So because what they're not doing, they're not trying to put out all these works just to say, oh, we're the best publisher. A lot of us are friends. We all talk. We exchange ideas and stories. Some of them are writers ourselves. So we less want to try to push other publishers out and say we're better than you, and we want to try to, we all have our own things we specialize in, and we kind of want to just push that. And this may not work for me, but submit it to there. This is a story that they would love.
Yeah.
So I think trying to have an award that specifically says, I'm a better publisher than you, is kind of counterproductive to, working together towards the ultimate goal. While being able to kind of have people recognize the works is a little bit different in the fact that all these works are now nominated. We can more just take pride in the fact that these works are being recognized.
Mighty noble of you guys.
Why, thank you.
Noble. No, I'm joking. But I mean, like that's always interesting to note. Like, I mean, and I guess that's probably one of the more interesting things for me is that so far almost every single publication that we've actually spoken to, we've heard almost the same thing. There's no bad blood between your publications and other publications. Everybody's just working towards, picking up on stories that other people might not pick up, and other people are picking up on, and like you guys create that ability for writers to go, hey, there is a niche for me somewhere. Like, you might reject one story, and another group of people might actually accept it and say, this actually sounds like a great idea. And
yeah, definitely.
I enjoy that. Like, I mean, and it's one of my favorite things about the furry literature. I guess I'm not necessarily sure if we can call it the guild, because I'm sure that a lot of people aren't necessarily connected with it.
Let's call it the collective.
The literary collective of the furry community. Oh, God. Now all I'm imagining is like a whole bunch of furries coming together like once a month from like all across the country, like every half a year. They go to like this weirdly like forested area and walk around in a circle chanting, like hitting themselves in the head with the best like literary work of the year.
The greater good.
Yeah, very much like ye's domine, and then like smack dona estis requiem. I need to finish the chant because Monty Python. But yeah, like that kind of thing, that we are the community that does this kind of stuff. And I actually like that. I like the idea that you guys, I guess in a lot of ways, work together. I mean, I've heard Jaffa works with you guys. Hal has been working with like several other different people. I think including you guys, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I actually work for Hal as an editor.
There we go. So and I guess that's what you sort of also qualify as, it's not, it's a small community, and you are working towards a very cool and very interesting goal.
Yeah,
To get,
absolutely.
yeah, okay.
And so actually, it's funny. Get to the flip side of the coin of that one, and this is kind of one when we talk about going back to, rejections and all of that. You know, you never want to send that really like you rejected me, you're gonna feel my wrath, or be horrible to work with email, or just in general, just be like during editing process if you're already accepted, to be that really pain in the butt person to work with. Again, we all talk. We're gonna say, hey, so I just worked with this person. I was trying to edit their story, and they just fought everything. Like this comma was clearly supposed to be there, and they put up a 45-minute thing on why that comma was not great. So keep that in
Mhm.
mind when you're gonna try to accept their story. We have those kind of conversations with each other. So
Yeah.
if you kind of burn your bridge with one of us, you burn your bridge with all of us. So
Yep.
that's why keeping that professionalism and just that general tact is really important. Again, on the flip side, so if someone works with, say, GoAL Publications and says, I had submitted a story to them and they got back to me, they were extremely rude. I could not, I couldn't talk to them whatsoever. They were unrelenting on anything that all that any suggestions I had for my story. They can go back to other writers who talk with other publishers,
Hmm.
and then you kind of get pushed aside in that regard because everybody talks.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I mean,
it's fun. It's kind of like that big collective. Which, if anyone wants to write that collective story, you should write it and submit it to GoAL Publications. We need submissions.
Or any
I
of
love
its
collective.
subsidiaries and affiliates.
work
Yes.
together with an editor from HAL, which might actually be the editor from GoAL, who's also the owner of GoAL, who will probably publish your story eventually because HAL doesn't necessarily have a space for it. Jaffa might then also buy rights to ensure that it gets to Australia. And, we haven't actually had many European publishers on here, Scratch. But note for later.
Yeah. Is that, dare I say, um,
Mostly because it's not English.
yeah, like Europe is big and has a lot of languages and dialects.
At,
So it's like English
oh,
day, go for it. Like,
mm.
the-
Just look at me.
don't fucking just look at
And
me.
that's actually one.
Scratch, scratch,
It's
scratch,
also
Yeah.
thinking
scratch.
there's
Yeah, I need us to work on like um a
Say again?
furry novel based in Paro
Oh Christ.
and
Fine.
and possibly Brackenfell, and odds are somewhere in KZN
We'll see
because
what we
then
can
I'm
do.
just gonna throw in like South African slang everywhere, and every now and again we're gonna create a language created out of like um Amto, for instance,
Hmm.
or possibly as more people might know it, Tsotsitaal or Fanagalo.
Hmm.
And then just have like translations under that with like a whole bunch of stars.
We don't have the budget for
Cherry
footnotes,
type
dude.
stars.
Seriously.
My face is a footnote. Okay.
Okay.
Um.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying before we were so rudely segued.
Yes. I need to have one. Carry on.
no. And actually, it's funny to mention because the majority of the publishers right now are kind of based or all around the U.S.
Mm.
And it's kind of interesting in that regard. I know some people are lost. I know, actually speaking of things and fonts, Charles Hodge Voice has actually started a publishing company up in Calgary. It was small. It's mostly working with his own anthologies right now, but he's trying to do
Mm.
more, trying to distribute for other publishers. And if you get Joff in Australia, and I'm going to butcher the name, but actually we just got distribution rights with Fuzzleswarm in Germany.
Hmm.
God, I'm sure I
Excuse
did
me.
horrible on that one,
I'm sorry. Look,
but
that
they're
profanity is not allowed here. Carry on.
my mother would be so ashamed of me. But yeah, so they're kind of like the main branch in majority of Europe. They go to Eurofirms and all that. Like they're kind of like the main bring all the books over to Europe um, distributor and publishers. I'm not sure how much they publish themselves, but they're kind of the main thing. But then most of the publishers are just sitting in the U.S. and I kind of wish more would more people outside the U.S. would kind of venture more into that. It's just I
Mm.
know obviously there's less of a market, more where you go. A lot of us are based around the North American community, but
Yeah.
it would be fun to see.
Yeah, not true. Yaku has a question for you.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a question about your persona.
So
He's very curious, apparently.
I haven't really I've been the otter for the longest time. In the last few years, I've more dropped. I hate to say this. I've more dropped out of furry as like a casual, the fun thing I do, and it's become a profession because my editing has become a full-time job. So while it's still a job that I enjoy and, if possible, would love to do as my main job for my life, it's whenever I think furry now, I think, oh God, what project am I working on now? And I've kind of moved a lot of weight towards the whole the persona and all of that. I still go by Otter as much as I need to for the sake of it. You see my mascot for Anther Aquatic, the blue otter. Like that's as close to one as I've had for a long time. I actually have a suit. I can't fit into it because I got fitted for it 100 pounds ago. But it's a thing that exists. I was all gung ho eventually, but yeah, now it's in the funnest way, nicest way possible. This is my job.
You could have it resized. I'd love to see you in the suit.
It needs more work than just that, but
Oh, okay.
poor thing.
Wear the head and like don't go full suit. Just
Yeah,
like
break it up into a partial.
Yeah.
I've literally, it's been on my list to do for like 3 years now, and it gets pushed aside for other things.
Like
I need to just buckle down and do it at some point. Yes.
Yeah, no, same problem here. Like, I wish I had the money to do something like that, but that's in the later category.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm obviously getting my suit sometime. I'm not necessarily sure, but yeah, it's happening.
Lucky
Not
you.
full, but partial.
Nice.
Hey, dude! I literally waited a year to get to be able to pay the person to make the damn thing.
I know. I'm well aware of the strife that you went through to get it.
Well,
I'm legitimately saying lucky you.
Yeah, look, support local is my thing, man. Come on.
I know.
So we've come to we're actually 5 minutes over time, but we've kind of come to the point where if you want to plug, like properly plug everything that you want to plug right now, go for it.
Okay, so big list here. So if you're into horror, erotic, and type stories, try Blackgate on its patreon.blackgate game. If you love noir type visual novels, Project Igo with Bit, great story, love working on it. And GoAL Publications, goalpublications.com, we need submissions. So if you have that novel, novella, single, a bunch of short stories you put into a collection that really just shows those animal traits, go for it, submit it to us. We'd love to see it. And vote for Claw the Way to Victory in the Coyotes and the Ursa Majors. I think that's everything.
Awesome sauce. Thank you very much for being on the podcast with us this evening. It was actually pretty fun to, just talk books and talk publishing and talk all that kind of stuff. I find it very, very interesting, which is probably one of the reasons why we're so biased towards having people who write on here more than anyone else at present. Scratch, you got to help me out here. I have no idea who else we're supposed to have on here. Those of you who are listening, we've gone on a writing sort of binge here, and like tomorrow or next week, so you guys know, we're actually having. I have the email here somewhere. No, I have it on Twitter. We have a pangolin fox joining us, who randomly messaged and yeah, he's I love his sonar. It's like the cutest thing ever. But yeah, let me see. It is Pangolin Fox. Yeah, Pangolin Fox at Torpol on Twitter, who I randomly messaged mostly because I loved his persona. Then I realized that, oh my goodness, he's a writer. So Once again, Scratch, please help me. Um,
The name of the person.
because what? No,
You-
not the name of the person. It's Pangolin Fox.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's the writer, or Hugo Jackson. He's the writer of the Legacy, or the Resonance trilogy. Who's worked on Legacy that's recently been coming out. Fracture's also out, book 2, which is part of a what?
Yes.
Do you say that tetralogy? Tetralogy? Because it sounds like it should be tetralogy,
I think that would be it.
but it's
Yeah, that's close to get.
tetralogy.
Tetralogy?
Okay.
Fuck, I don't know.
More commonly, it's referred to as a series at that point.
Yeah. I guess a trilogy in 5 parts.
Welcome to everything that everybody else writes. Oh, look, I found out more things that I need to be able to write with this thing. Hold on, I need to go to book 12. Oh shit, I've died.
Yeah. Shame.
My predecessor has, or like my fucking protege has decided to split my book into 2 because there's just too much information. Those of you guys who know, Wheel of Time. Ugh. Dude, Scratch, I'm going to put this out there. Wheel of Time came out when I was in no, not even high school, primary school. I read book 1, right? And by this point, the first book 1 had been like out for like 10 years already. I got it in the library, I read it, I went to read book 2. I stopped reading it after a while because I don't know, it didn't fit my style of writing. I liked Feist more than I liked that writing style. It's still going. I'm assuming that eventually Game of Thrones is going to run out of content and run out of the time that winter might be coming. Sorry. But yeah.
I'm
So,
sorry, I
I mean,
dozed off there.
yeah, exactly. Just do it, apparently, says Brastos. But yeah, thank you very much for being on the show. Sorry for segueing a bit there. I was at a loss for a segue for a while. I really needed a long one there, so about like 5 minutes would do. Thank you again for being on here. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you on again if you have anything that might be coming up in the pipeline that you'd like to, put out there, or if you want to talk about, say, more of the funny stories that you have in respect to some of the submissions. Obviously, no names or anything like that, but it's interesting to know that kind of stuff.
You feel like venting on a
Like,
public platform.
this person, screw them for like an hour and a half. You can go right ahead.
I got more stories I can bring. Don't worry.
All right, but thanks
But
again.
yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate having you. It was a lot of fun. One of the things that I've actually always said so far, I'm not sure if Scratch has heard me say this yet, it's weird that we've had some of the best interactions with writers and publishers. I mean, because you guys seem to be like, not just like, writing storytellers, but you guys sort of engage sometimes a little bit better than others do. I don't know why it just happens like that, but it's been like that. I mean, Tempo engages well, Kyle engaged well, you engaged well, and I'm happy to have that. It's I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why we have writers more than anything else at this point. But that obviously just means that other people should step up their game.
Yeah.
Set the bar high, everyone.
Good.
You're on the one show that says fuck more often than it says conversation. All right, guys. So obviously, music is coming up next. Those of you guys who are listening on furry.fm, I should probably thank people. There are so many guests on this evening. It's actually kind of funny. Wow. Kinkin ZA, obviously on First Stream, listening on that side. Very, very awesome that he's still supporting the platform for First Stream. And those of you guys who know about First Stream, they're really, really cool for, furry games and things like that, and gaming, not furry games, but like furries, gaming, and streaming art and everything like that. We started our partnership with them about, what, Scratch, year and a half ago?
Something like that, yeah.
Still going strong on that platform, mostly because, I don't know, like out of the ones that we've seen, it's been relatively stable mostly. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, any bit
And
of support
then
you could throw their way, it would be more than appreciated.
yeah. So for the guys on Fur.fm who are listening, there's Brastos, Martin, Zed, Fox from East Haven. Hey, we got a whole bunch of we got a whole bunch of people from the US actually listening right now. Wolfie Steelpaw, Advolf, thank you for supporting. Obviously, guest 181, guest 295, guest 303. I'm just gonna say number from now on. So
Mm-hmm.
411, 459, 508, 542, 630, 660, 77. Maffey was on here just now as well. I just saw that he was on here, but he's disappeared again. But yeah, so thank you guys all for listening. Really, really appreciate it. Obviously, you can check our YouTube channel for the replays of this podcast specifically. We'll have that link up hopefully on Twitter eventually. Scratch, please send it to me so that I know.
Will do.
And then obviously I'll just retweet it on Twitter to let you guys know that it's up. And yeah, thank you guys again for listening. Thank you, Sean, for being with us. We really appreciate it. And again, we're opening up the invitation. If you have anything you want to talk about at any given point, drop us a line, and we'll be able to have you on again at some point. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. And come see me at Furthermore and buy Yako's book. Will be released there.
Whoop, whoop.
All right. We'll see you guys next week then. Cheers, cheers.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Later.